Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, permit me at the outset to thank you, Mr. President, for your invitation to participate in this conference, which brings together the widest possible range of stakeholders working with and in the coffee industry. I will be talking mainly about the impact of commodities, and in particular coffee, on the economic and social development of poor developing countries. This should be the goal of all economic activity, to achieve a level of development that is socially beneficial, environmentally harmless, and economically sustainable. In addition, I will highlight several areas where the current economic crisis is having a transformational effect on the commodity economy. Commodities like coffee provide many economic opportunities for developing countries, but also expose them to several risks. Historically, the terms of trade for commodities compared to those for manufactured goods have been in decline, a trend that coffee growers and exporters can confirm. For many commodities, there are fewer opportunities for productivity gains than in manufacturing. And for many exporters, it has been relatively more difficult to add value to their primary product and move up the value chain. Although there are examples of where this is changing, in many cases, countries have not reaped the full potential from their commodity endowments and have been dependent on rising demand in importing countries to maintain their earnings and the terms of trade. For developing countries, commodity exporters in general, reliance on external markets increases their vulnerability to fluctuations in international prices. In the coffee industry, this is less so for the biggest exporters like Brazil, Vietnam, Colombia, where coffee represents a relatively small share of overall exports. But for producers such as Ethiopia, where coffee represents close to 40% of export, the country is potentially more vulnerable to price shocks and balance of payments problems. Even for the larger exporters, there are still important questions to be asked about the diversification and development of both products and market. In particular, the growth of the domestic market and the capturing of higher value processes and coffee products. The development of domestic markets for all exporters has been brought into focus since the start of the current global financial and economic crisis, which has caused the most precipitous fall in international demand since the Second World War. On top of that, it has also undermined policies oriented towards export-led growth. This is particularly relevant to developing countries, which often have a large share of exports in their GDP. And it is even more relevant to commodity producers that are dependent on foreign demand. For countries dependent on export markets for their growth, the crisis has been an incentive to look at developing domestic markets as well as markets within the region. For coffee, global consumption rates are much lower in producer countries, suggesting that there is great potential to develop domestic consumption in these countries. The economic crisis has also exposed the vulnerability of commodity exporters to speculative activities. In the second half of the year 2008, as the subprime market collapsed, speculators looked for new investment opportunities in different asset classes. Commodities become the next target, and a series of price spikes in agriculture and energy commodities were fueled in part by speculative positions in several derivative markets. More recently, we have seen sugar become the target of speculative activity, and in the past, coffee has experienced similar pressures. The problem of speculation for producers is that it creates false price signals and expectations about future production, which ultimately destabilize supply and can lead to a price collapse. Whilst many financial and market-based hedging products can help producers shed some of the risks of production and price volatility, they can also be distorted by excessive speculation. It is questionable whether these excesses, which can have such disastrous consequences for the livelihoods of farmers, should be permitted to continue. This is especially pertinent for the coffee industry, which in many producing countries is characterized by smallholders' production. Over the past 30 years, the deregulation and lack of transparency in the financial and commodities market has contributed to increasing volatility in commodity prices. It is important that the monitoring and regulation of speculative activities now be tightened in the wake of both the economic crisis and the recent erratic movements in agricultural and energy prices. The proposal currently being put forward for the international control of speculative activities, mainly in currencies and financial products, are welcome. However, they need to be coordinated across countries and sectors to ensure that speculators cannot exploit opportunities for arbitrage, either between asset classes or between countries and regions. Such an agreement targeting the distortional effects of large-scale speculation in different areas is absolutely crucial for stability in commodities markets and for creating a wider framework for globalization that has the potential to deliver rising living standards for all. In addition to changes in product and market orientation and speculation, another feature of the current global economic crisis that could have a far-reaching impact on commodity production is greater recognition of the state's role in supporting economic activity. We have recently seen the state come to the rescue of the banking and manufacturing sectors, as well as provide counter-cyclical fiscal stimulus to shore up demand in many countries around the world. But the state's role should extend beyond the provision of safety nets for markets, industries, and employment. There was, unfortunately, a rolling back of the state in the agriculture sector and in agricultural marketing in particular in most coffee-producing countries within the context of macroeconomic policy reforms of the past 3 decades.